For 3,000 years, humans and the Chytrians, an advanced alien species, lived in peace. The Chytrians had never been interested in war, believing that their highly developed technology and peaceful nature would allow them to coexist with any species. And for millennia, that belief was true. The Earth and its people were known throughout the galaxy for their resilience, their creativity, and their ability to adapt to nearly any situation. Though humans were not the most technologically advanced species, they had a unique quality that made them respected by all. They never gave up. But that peace, that quiet understanding between two very different civilizations, was shattered one bright morning when a mysterious transmission flooded every communication channel on Earth. A message came from the Chytrians, delivered in a cold, metallic voice that echoed across the planet. It was a declaration of war. The message was simple but chilling. We, the Chytrians, declare war on humanity. Your time of peace has ended. Surrender or face destruction. At first, no one could believe it. There was no way. The Chytrians had always been peaceful. They had been allies for centuries, helping humanity with knowledge, technology, and support. But this message was different. The tone was threatening, and it was clear that the Chytrians meant it. It was almost as if they had suddenly forgotten everything they had once valued in favor of something darker. World leaders scrambled to understand what had happened. People gathered in the streets, waiting for updates. The news broadcasts were filled with experts trying to make sense of it all. Why had the Chytrians chosen this moment to break their centuries-old peace? What had changed? Some believed it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. Others feared the worst. But as the hours passed, something unexpected began to happen. People weren't terrified. They weren't cowering in fear. Instead, they started to laugh. It wasn't the kind of laugh that comes from mockery or disrespect. No, this was something different. It was laughter born from disbelief, from the sheer absurdity of the situation. People couldn't help themselves. The Chytrians, with all their advanced technology and years of peace, had declared war on humanity. The species that had fought through wars, pestilence, natural disasters, and more. The same people who had once been on the brink of extinction, but had bounced back time and time again. It seemed impossible. At first, it was only a few scattered chuckles. But soon, as the message repeated itself, more and more people joined in. A laughter that spread from one person to another, from one country to the next. News stations began to play clips of ordinary citizens laughing at the audacity of the Chytrians. Some were joking about the size of their fleet, others about how the Chytrians had clearly underestimated the spirit of humanity. They didn't seem frightened or worried. They seemed almost entertained. Even the world leaders, the ones who were supposed to be calm and composed in the face of such a serious threat, couldn't help but crack a smile. The idea that the Chytrians, who had watched over Earth for so long, would now turn their backs and attempt to destroy the human race, just like that, was almost laughable. "This is ridiculous," said one military general during a press conference. "The Chytrians haven't faced a real fight in thousands of years. We've been through worse. They don't understand what they're up against." Humanity's response to the Chytrian threat was not one of fear, but one of disbelief and defiance. The world had faced many challenges before, but none had been quite like this. And yet, in the face of it all, humanity stood united. The laughter wasn't just about the situation. It was about what the Chytrians didn't know. They didn't know that humans didn't give up. They didn't know that humanity had the ability to adapt, to overcome, and to fight when no one else would. The Chytrians had made a grave mistake by underestimating their opponent. As the laughter continued, a sense of pride began to swell in the hearts of people across Earth. The Chytrians may have believed that they were coming to destroy humanity, but what they didn't understand was that the true strength of humanity wasn't in its technology or military power. It was in its resilience, its refusal to back down, no matter the odds. The laughter, loud and strong, echoed through the airwaves. It was a message to the Chytrians, a message they would soon learn to regret ignoring. Humanity was not afraid. In fact, humanity was already preparing for what was to come. But they would do it on their terms, not the Chytrians. No matter how powerful their ships or their weapons were, humanity would find a way to fight back. And it all started with that one moment, a moment of laughter. The laughter that had filled the airwaves slowly began to fade as the reality of the situation set in. The Chytrians, despite their surprise, were serious. No more jokes, no more time for laughter. The alien fleet was already on its way. The first signs of their arrival were small, a faint blip in Earth's radar, barely noticeable. But within hours, the sky was filled with strange ships, massive, gleaming vessels with smooth metallic surfaces, unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The Chytrians' fleet was a sight to behold, each ship larger than any skyscraper on Earth. Their technology was beyond anything humanity could imagine, a perfect example of a species who had mastered both the stars and the art of peace. And now, they were using it for war. The news outlets immediately shifted from jokes and laughter to serious reports. People stopped laughing. The moment of disbelief had passed, and now the world had to prepare for what was coming. The Chytrians had come to Earth with one mission: to force humanity into submission or face total destruction. The ships hovered above major cities across the globe. There was no sign of immediate attack, but the sheer size of the fleet was enough to make any observer feel a sense of dread. Governments scrambled to understand what to do next. What could they do against an enemy with such advanced technology? Their weapons were powerful, their ships impenetrable. How could humans possibly stand a chance? But even as panic began to settle over the world, there was still a strange sense of defiance. The laughter may have stopped, but the humans were not ready to give up. The defiance from earlier, the belief that they could somehow beat the Chytrians, had turned into something more tangible: resolve. In every corner of the world, people went about their day-to-day lives, continuing to do what they did best: innovate. Across every continent, scientists and engineers scrambled to analyze the alien ships, to understand their technology. The military began preparing for the worst, but even the most experienced generals knew that the Chytrians were a completely different kind of enemy. No one had ever fought a war like this before. Meanwhile, the Chytrians seemed confused. Their leader, a tall, dignified alien named Rakhar, watched as his fleet positioned itself in orbit around Earth. He had expected fear, submission, or at the very least, confusion from the humans. Instead, the humans seemed calm. Some even appeared amused. Was this a trap? Was there something about humanity that Rakhar hadn't anticipated? As the days passed, the Chytrians began to lose their confidence. What they had thought would be an easy victory was proving to be more complicated than they had imagined. Despite their overwhelming numbers and advanced technology, they found themselves faced with a species that was not intimidated by their ships, their threats, or their superior weapons. The military on Earth took action quickly. Though they had no way of knowing what the Chytrians' next move would be, they knew they had to prepare. Humans might not have the same level of technology as the Chytrians, but they had something the aliens could never understand: determination. The Chytrians had underestimated the human spirit. One night, as the Chytrians continued to hover above major cities, a message was broadcast worldwide. This time, it wasn't a declaration of war, but a challenge. A man in military uniform, with a calm but determined expression, appeared on screens across the globe. His voice was steady as he spoke. "You've come to wage war against us, but we're not afraid. We have fought harder battles than this before. We will not back down. We will fight. We will win." The humans did not flinch in the face of the alien fleet. In fact, they were ready to prove something. They were not like the species the Chytrians had faced in the past. There would be no immediate surrender. There would be no quiet acceptance of defeat. Humanity would fight back in ways the Chytrians could never predict. On Earth, every country, every city, every community began to prepare. The world's best minds were working together, combining their knowledge and resources. Humans had always been resourceful, and now they were going to need every ounce of that ingenuity. Even civilians joined the effort. People started to build their own makeshift defenses, not with advanced alien tech, but with what they had: tools, old military equipment, and the will to fight. The Chytrians had expected Earth to be a fragile, defenseless world, but they were beginning to see something different. Humanity's spirit could not be broken so easily. In orbit, Rakhar's once proud fleet began to notice strange things. Suddenly, they found that their communications with their homeworld were sporadic. Some of their ship's systems were malfunctioning. It wasn't much, but it was enough to cause concern. Was it sabotage? Was it something the humans had done? How were they causing this? Rakhar's once unshakable confidence started to waver. The Chytrians had arrived expecting an easy conquest. What they found instead was a species that, despite the odds, refused to be intimidated. Humanity's laughter had been the first sign. Now, the world was showing the Chytrians that this fight would not be as easy as they had assumed. As the days turned to weeks, Rakhar began to wonder. Had the Chytrians misjudged the humans? Could they have underestimated their adversary in a way that would cost them everything? The Chytrian fleet had been orbiting Earth for weeks now, and despite their overwhelming power, there was no sign of the humans giving in. Rakhar, the leader of the Chytrians, watched in frustration as his forces grew increasingly uncertain. The Earthlings, who had once been seen as a small, unremarkable species, were now proving to be a formidable force in their own right. No matter how much they tried to understand the humans, the Chytrians couldn't make sense of their resilience. On Earth, the preparations continued. The world had come together in a way no one had expected. Countries that had once been divided by politics, religion, and culture were now united by a single goal: survival. Governments, military leaders, scientists, and civilians alike had all committed themselves to one purpose: defending their home. It didn't matter that humanity didn't have the advanced technology the Chytrians possessed. What mattered was the strength of their will. In the underground bunkers of military bases, engineers worked tirelessly to develop new weapons and strategies. The best minds in Earth's history were now working as one to find any way possible to level the playing field. They weren't ready to match the Chytrians ship for ship, but they were coming up with creative ways to fight back. While the military leaders discussed plans and strategies, ordinary people were also doing their part. They volunteered to help with anything they could, whether it was helping to build defenses or providing supplies. In every town and city, groups of citizens organized themselves to create makeshift weapons and prepare for whatever the Chytrians might throw at them. One of the most surprising things to the Chytrians was the unity they saw in humanity. The humans were not fighting among themselves as the Chytrians had expected. They were working together as if nothing could break their spirit. From the smallest towns to the largest cities, every person was on the same page. Earth must survive, and they would do anything to ensure that it did. Meanwhile, Rakhar and his fleet watched closely. They had hoped that the humans would surrender quickly, but it had become clear that this would not happen. The Chytrians had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt and to survive in even the most challenging situations. Rakhar had assumed that the fear of their superior technology would force the humans to give up, but instead, the humans seemed to grow stronger as the days passed. Then, a breakthrough came. A team of scientists in South America had discovered a way to disrupt the Chytrian fleet's communication systems. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it was a step forward. The Chytrians were beginning to lose their grip on their carefully planned invasion. Military experts began to strategize around this new information. If they could keep the Chytrians' communication systems offline for long enough, they could confuse the invaders, preventing them from coordinating their movements and attacks. When the news spread across the world, the humans were overjoyed. It wasn't much, but it was a sign that their efforts were working. They had cracked a part of the Chytrians' technology, and that meant they could do it again. There was a renewed sense of hope. If the humans could disrupt the Kitrians' technology once, they could do it again and again. At this point, Rakhar began to grow increasingly frustrated. The humans, in his eyes, were supposed to be an easy conquest, but now they were proving to be a much bigger challenge. His fleet had expected fear, panic, and submission. Instead, they found determination, unity, and an unwavering will to fight. The Kitrians had underestimated the human spirit, and that mistake was proving costly. On Earth, a new sense of purpose had taken hold. The humans had no intention of bowing to the Kitrians. Instead, they began to make plans for an offensive. They weren't waiting to be attacked any longer. They were preparing to strike back. With the help of their scientists and engineers, the humans were working on new technologies that could rival the Kitrians' superior ships and weapons. One of the most promising ideas came from a young inventor in Asia. He had designed a device that could disrupt the energy fields around the Kitrian ships. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. It was small, portable, and it could be deployed in a variety of ways. The humans were learning how to fight back in ways the Kitrians had never imagined. Back in the sky, the Kitrians grew increasingly impatient. Rakhar had expected that his fleet would have crushed humanity by now. Instead, they found themselves at a standstill, unable to make any progress. The humans were not only refusing to surrender, but they were also adapting faster than the Kitrians had anticipated. Every day, Rakhar's frustration grew, but at the same time, he couldn't help but admire humanity's ability to fight against the odds. He had never seen a species like this before. They were unpredictable, fierce, and united in ways that most species could never hope to match. And while he would never admit it to his fleet, a part of him was beginning to wonder whether the Kitrians had made a grave mistake. On Earth, the war was only just beginning, and the humans were preparing for the fight of their lives. They may have started out laughing, but now they were fully awake. And the Kitrians would soon learn that humanity's laughter had been the first warning shot. The real battle was about to begin. Days passed, and the Kitrian fleet continued to hover above Earth, seemingly waiting for a move from the humans. Rakhar, the Kitrian leader, had expected the humans to break under the pressure by now. Yet, despite all the advanced technology at his disposal, the Kitrians found themselves facing a world full of unexpected surprises. The humans were proving to be unpredictable, and Rakhar's once sure confidence was starting to falter. On Earth, the momentum was shifting. People had been working day and night, preparing in ways that the Kitrians hadn't anticipated. With each passing day, human scientists made new breakthroughs. The disruptions to Kitrian communication systems were becoming more effective, and military strategists had begun to develop new ways to target the Kitrian fleet's weak points. Humans were no longer reacting to the alien threat. They were actively planning to turn the tables. In one of the United States' top-secret military labs, a team of scientists led by Dr. Elena Cruz made an important discovery. They had found a way to hijack the Kitrians' energy shields using a combination of electromagnetic pulses and human-engineered technology. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it gave them a fighting chance. If they could deploy this technology, it could create openings in the Kitrian shields, allowing human weapons to do real damage. The news of this breakthrough spread quickly. Within hours, soldiers from various countries were briefed on the new plan. The military's top generals agreed that it was time to launch a counterattack, and the humans were ready. They had been preparing for this moment ever since the Kitrians arrived. Humanity had learned how to defend itself against the unexpected, and now they were ready to turn the tables. The first wave of the counterattack was swift. A group of specially trained human soldiers, equipped with the new shield-disrupting devices, boarded advanced fighter jets. These were not as powerful as the Kitrian ships, but the humans had developed their own kind of ingenuity. The jets were smaller, faster, and more maneuverable, making them difficult targets for the alien fleet. The soldiers took their positions, ready to strike at the heart of the Kitrian fleet. The operation began under the cover of darkness. As the human jets soared into the air, Their shields powered up, and the first signals were sent to the Kitrian fleet. The alien ships, which had been expecting a standard defense, were caught off guard when the shields suddenly flickered and failed. In the blink of an eye, the human jets launched precision strikes on the Kitrian vessels, sending shockwaves through the alien ranks. Rakhar watched in disbelief from his command ship as the first Kitrian ships were hit. His fleet had always been impenetrable, but the humans had found a way to bypass their defenses. It wasn't a major blow yet, but it was enough to shake his confidence. He had not expected this kind of resistance, and he realized now that humanity wasn't the easy target they had assumed. On the ground, civilians watched in awe as the first signs of the human counterattack unfolded. The people who had once been afraid now saw hope. The laughter that had filled the air when the Kitrians first arrived was replaced by cheers. People crowded around televisions and radios, following every detail of the attack. They weren't just spectators. They were part of the fight. Every person, every community, every nation had joined together to make this moment possible. In space, the battle raged on. The Kitrians, disoriented and frustrated, scrambled to regroup. Their ships began to work in tandem, forming tight defensive formations in an effort to prevent further damage. But the humans weren't done yet. They had only just begun. Back on Earth, the Kitrians realized that their superior technology wasn't the advantage they had once believed it to be. The humans had adapted. They had learned, fought back, and now they were showing the Kitrians that they were not as invincible as they had thought. Rakhar couldn't believe it. His fleet was now under attack in ways they had never imagined. The humans had come together, using their resourcefulness and determination to strike back. Every Kitrian ship that fell was a reminder of the strength of humanity, a species that refused to give up. Despite the damage to his fleet, Rakhar refused to acknowledge defeat. He was determined to see this war through, but the unexpected counterattack had changed everything. The Kitrians had expected to crush the humans, but instead they found themselves facing an enemy that would not back down. On Earth, the human forces did not stop after the first wave. They pushed forward, adapting and improving their strategies as they went. Military leaders from all corners of the world worked together, sharing knowledge and coordinating attacks. There was no longer any question about humanity's will to survive. It was clear now. They would fight with everything they had. In the coming days, the humans would continue to fight back, pushing the Kitrians further and further from their world. Rakhar would soon realize that humanity was not the species he had thought them to be. They were more than just a planet to conquer. They were a force to be reckoned with. As the counterattack intensified, the Kitrians were left to question their assumptions. They had thought they were dealing with a primitive species, but instead, they had found a fierce and determined enemy. The war was far from over, but one thing was certain. Humanity was not going to lose without a fight. The Kitrian fleet, though technologically superior, had now faced its first serious setback. The humans were proving to be more resourceful than Rakhar could have ever predicted. The small but effective strikes they had launched had disrupted the Kitrian command structure. What started as a few skirmishes quickly evolved into something much larger, a coordinated effort that caught the Kitrians off guard. Back on Earth, the mood had shifted dramatically. What had begun as fear and confusion was now replaced by hope and unity. The attacks had not only exposed vulnerabilities in the Kitrian fleet, but also showed the humans that they had the ability to fight back. Governments, once paralyzed by the alien threat, were now working together in a way that had never been seen before. They shared intelligence, resources, and manpower like never before. Every part of the world was now a battlefield, but also a place of strength. Dr. Elena Cruz, who had helped design the shield-disrupting technology, was now leading a team of engineers and scientists who were working to improve and refine their strategies. They had learned quickly that the Kitrians relied heavily on their advanced technology to maintain control. The more they could interfere with that technology, the more the Kitrians would struggle. Elena's team now worked on new ways to exploit weaknesses in the alien fleet's energy systems, hoping to find more effective ways to bring the war to their doorstep. But it wasn't just the military or the scientists who were contributing. Ordinary people had joined the fight in ways no one could have imagined. Volunteer groups across the globe had organized to help with logistics, repairs, and even basic supplies. Civilians worked alongside soldiers, in factories, and in fields to keep the world running as smoothly as possible while the war raged on. The people of Earth were united, not just in the fight for survival, but in the belief that they could prevail. In space, the Chytrians were growing increasingly frustrated. They had expected a quick victory, but now, they found themselves on the defensive. The coordinated human attacks had forced them to rethink their strategies. Rakhar had underestimated the humans. He had thought they would crumble under the weight of their own helplessness, but instead, they had risen to the challenge. Every day, he received reports of more Chytrian ships being damaged or destroyed. His fleet was still larger and more powerful, but the humans were learning to strike at the most vulnerable points. It was during one of these battles that the turning point came. A small group of human fighters, led by Colonel Sarah Green, launched a daring mission to infiltrate the Chytrian flagship. Their goal was simple: disable the alien ship's main power core. The mission was risky, but they knew that if they could pull it off, they could deliver a blow that would cripple the Chytrian fleet. The operation was flawless. With the Chytrian fleet distracted by larger attacks, Colonel Green's squadron slipped through their defenses. Using stealth tactics, they bypassed the alien ship's security systems and boarded the flagship. It wasn't long before they reached the heart of the ship, its power core. With a combination of explosives and the electromagnetic disruptors they had perfected, they set to work disabling the core. The moment the power core was destroyed, the Chytrian flagship fell into disarray. Without its central energy source, the ship's shields collapsed and its weapons systems shut down. The rest of the Chytrian fleet began to experience the same issues, and chaos quickly spread across their ranks. The humans had done it. They had taken down the most powerful ship in the Chytrian fleet. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. People cheered, and celebrations broke out in every corner of the planet. The humans had struck a decisive blow, and the Chytrians were reeling. For the first time since the invasion began, Rakhar and his fleet were forced to retreat. The humans had gained the upper hand, and the Chytrians realized that they had underestimated this small, resilient species. Rakhar, sitting in his command ship, knew he had lost the initiative. The humans had managed to outthink him, outmaneuver him, and outfight him. It was a blow to his pride, and he could not accept it. But deep down, he knew that the humans were not just fighting to survive. They were fighting to protect everything they held dear, and that, Rakhar understood, was the most dangerous kind of enemy. For the first time in the war, the Chytrians were forced to reconsider their position. They had always seen themselves as the dominant species in the galaxy, their technology far superior to that of any other race. But now, they were facing a species that, though smaller and weaker, was driven by something the Chytrians didn't fully understand: an unwavering determination to protect their home. As Rakhar and his commanders regrouped, the humans on Earth didn't rest. They knew that this victory was just the beginning. They had shown the Chytrians that they weren't invincible, and now it was time to press their advantage. The Chytrians may have retreated for now, but the war was far from over. The humans had learned something important. No matter how advanced their enemy was, their strength lay in their unity and their refusal to back down. The Chytrians had shown their power, but the humans had shown their heart, and it was that heart that would carry them through the war. Rakhar, watching from space, knew that the human spirit was not to be underestimated. He had made a critical mistake. Now, the real fight was just beginning. The news of the Chytrian flagship's defeat echoed through the galaxies. On Earth, celebrations erupted as people rejoiced in their first major victory. For the first time since the invasion, humans could breathe a little easier, knowing that the Chytrians were not invincible. This victory had shown that the Chytrian fleet, no matter how advanced, could be defeated with the right strategy, the right courage, and the right unity. Rahkar, sitting in the command center of the Kitrian fleet, seethed with anger. The loss of their flagship had been a crushing blow to their pride and their military strength. He had underestimated the humans, and now they were no longer just a small primitive species to be crushed. They were a force to be reckoned with. His fleet, once poised to strike at Earth and finish the war, was now in disarray. The retreat had become necessary, but it was not a retreat in victory. It was a retreat in shame. The Kitrian fleet pulled back, moving further into space to regroup. The human counterattacks had been relentless, and every strike they made showed that they were learning, adapting, and improving. The Kitrians had not expected this kind of fight. The humans' use of unconventional tactics, their determination to defend their home, and their ability to surprise the Kitrians at every turn had turned the tide of the war in a way no one had anticipated. Back on Earth, the victory over the Kitrians had sparked a renewed sense of pride. The governments, military leaders, and civilians who had been involved in the struggle felt a deep connection to the victory. It was a reminder that no matter the odds, humanity could overcome them. People from all walks of life, scientists, soldiers, engineers, and even students, had come together to fight the invaders. It was proof that humanity's greatest strength lay in their ability to unite and innovate. But despite the celebrations, no one was complacent. They knew the Kitrians were not done. They had retreated, yes, but they had not given up. The war was far from over, and the humans couldn't afford to rest on their laurels. They had won one battle, but the Kitrians were not the type to accept defeat easily. The question now was whether humanity could continue to push back the aliens, or if the Kitrians would find a way to regroup and strike again. Dr. Elena Cruz, the scientist who had helped develop the technology that had allowed the humans to strike back, continued to lead efforts to improve their defensive strategies. Her team worked tirelessly to enhance the disruptor technology and find new ways to protect Earth from the Kitrians' superior weapons. Elena knew that this victory had given them a fighting chance, but she also knew that they needed to stay one step ahead if they were to win the war. Meanwhile, the military forces, bolstered by the recent success, were working on expanding their efforts. They focused on strengthening the global defense network, building more advanced weapons, and preparing for the possibility of another Kitrian attack. The momentum had shifted, but humans understood that this was only the beginning. The retreat of the Kitrian fleet was not an end. It was a pause. The aliens would not stop until they had achieved their goal, and the humans knew they had to be ready for whatever came next. Colonel Sarah Green, the leader of the mission that had taken down the Kitrian flagship, reflected on the battle. Her team had been praised for their bravery, but she knew that the real victory belonged to every person on Earth who had fought back in some way. Soldiers, civilians, scientists, farmers, and students alike had all played their part in pushing the Kitrians back. It was this unity, this willingness to fight together for their future, that had won the day. As the Kitrian fleet retreated into the depths of space, Rahkar sat silently in his command ship. The loss of the flagship had shaken him, but it was the human resilience that had truly begun to unsettle him. The humans were not like any species he had encountered before. They did not give up easily, and they did not fold under pressure. They were a challenge he had not prepared for, and that realization was something he could not ignore. Rahkar now faced a difficult decision. The Kitrians had been forced to retreat for now, but the war was not over. The humans were proving themselves to be more than just survivors. They were becoming a threat, and Rahkar could not allow this to go unchallenged. The next steps would be crucial. On Earth, as the days passed, the leaders of the human forces knew that they had to prepare for the next phase of the conflict. The retreat of the Kitrians did not mean victory. It meant they had gained a temporary advantage. The humans still had a long road ahead of them, and the lessons learned from the recent victory would guide them in the battles to come. It was clear now that this war would not be fought with brute strength alone. It would be fought with intelligence, innovation, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. The Kitrians had learned a valuable lesson. The human will to survive could not be crushed so easily. As Rakhar looked out across the stars, he knew that his next move would be critical. The Kitrians could not afford another setback. But deep down, he realized that the humans, for all their flaws, might just be the most dangerous species he had ever encountered. And the war was far from over. Months had passed since the Kitrian fleet retreated, but the tension was still palpable on Earth. The humans had tasted victory, but they knew the war was far from over. The Kitrians might have retreated for now, but they were not beaten. The question everyone asked was, would the humans be able to withstand another invasion? Could they hold their ground once again? The governments of Earth were united in their resolve. They had no intention of letting the Kitrians return unchecked. Every resource was now focused on building stronger defenses, improving the technology they had developed, and training soldiers to be ready for the worst. The defeat of the Kitrian flagship had been a morale booster, but the next steps would be crucial in securing a lasting peace. Dr. Elena Cruz and her team worked around the clock, refining the disruptor technology that had turned the tide in the previous battles. They were now focused on adapting the technology for a larger scale, one that could bring down entire fleets of alien ships. The Kitrians had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and innovate, but they would not make that mistake again. Meanwhile, Colonel Sarah Green and her team were preparing for the inevitable next phase of the war. They knew the Kitrians would return, and when they did, it would not be with the same tactics they had used before. The Kitrians would come stronger, more organized, and more determined to wipe humanity from the galaxy. Rakhar, the Kitrian commander, was not one to be easily defeated. Though he had retreated with his fleet, he had not given up. The defeat of the flagship was a major setback, but he had learned valuable lessons about the humans. They were clever, resourceful, and most dangerous of all, they were relentless. He knew the next time they met, it would be a fight for survival. The Kitrians spent months regrouping. They studied the humans' tactics, observed their technology, and adapted their strategies. Rakhar knew the time for mistakes was over. He was determined to finish what his fleet had started. The Kitrians had resources, technology, and sheer numbers, but the one thing they didn't account for was the heart of humanity. As the Kitrian fleet finally began its advance back toward Earth, the humans were ready. They had used the time to their advantage, preparing for a war that could determine the fate of their planet. The world was unified as never before. Every country, every person, had a role to play. There was no turning back now. The first wave of Kitrian ships arrived at Earth's outer defenses. They were massive, more powerful than any of the ships humanity had previously encountered. But the humans were ready. The defenses they had built were more advanced, more capable than anything the Kitrians had seen in their first invasion. The shields, developed with the help of the disruptor technology, could now hold off the alien weapons long enough to allow the humans to launch a counterattack. Colonel Green, now leading a larger team of fighters, took to the skies once more. The humans had learned much since their previous battles. They knew how to strike at the Kitrians' weak points, how to use their own technology against them. Every move was carefully calculated, every attack carefully timed. It wasn't just brute force anymore. It was strategy and precision. Dr. Cruz's technology, once a breakthrough, was now an integral part of the humans' war effort. It was used to disrupt the Kitrian shields, allowing human ships to break through their defenses. Each victory, no matter how small, brought humanity closer to victory. The Kitrians, though powerful, had become less confident. They were not prepared for this level of resistance. As the battle in space raged on, Rakhar grew frustrated. His fleet had been forced into a stalemate. The human defenses were stronger than anticipated, and their tactics had evolved beyond what he had imagined. The Kitrians' advanced weaponry was ineffective against the humans' ingenuity. Rakhar's fleet was being worn down, and he realized that the war had changed forever. It was then that the final blow was struck. A human-led mission, led by Colonel Green and Dr. Cruz, infiltrated the Kitrian flagship once more. They used the same tactics that had worked before, but this time they had a new weapon, a powerful EMP designed to shut down the Kitrians' entire fleet. With one well-timed strike, the humans disabled the Kitrian command ship, and the entire fleet fell into chaos. The Kitrians, unable to communicate or coordinate their efforts, were overwhelmed. The humans pressed their advantage, and with a series of well-placed attacks, they forced the Kitrian ships to retreat. The war was finally over. The Kitrians, once so sure of their victory, were forced to leave Earth. The humans had won. On Earth, the celebrations were immense. The people who had once been so afraid now stood victorious. The Kitrians had come with superior technology and the intent to conquer, but they had underestimated the strength of humanity. The human spirit, resilient, united, and unyielding, had proven stronger than any weapon or fleet. The war had ended, but the lessons learned would last a lifetime. Humanity had shown that no matter how powerful the enemy, they could fight back. They had not just defended their planet, they had sent a message to the stars. No one would threaten Earth again. And so, with the stars now free of alien threats, humanity looked to the future, stronger and more united than ever. The galaxy had witnessed the power of the human spirit, and it would never forget the day the Kitrians learned that humanity was not to be underestimated.